Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of our fitness series. I have Mustafa with us. Mustafa and I have been talking about all things health in the previous episodes, and continuing that trend, I have Hasnan Naveed with me, who is a former competitive boxer and who likes to grow in all spheres continuously. So first of all, guys, welcome to the panel.
Thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. How is everybody?
So I think I am very curious to know that since we were talking before the recording started, a journey of kickboxing to meditation. How's that work out?
The journey of kickboxing to meditation. Okay, so in one word, I would say pressure is how I would summarize it. And simply because when I was 6, when I started kickboxing, my brother put me into it. So he's 5 years older than me. So there's always this like pressure to perform, pressure to be better than everybody else, pressure to always win. And anything away from not winning just meant I was rubbish. Like there was nothing in between. You know, the Pakistani way, you're either good or basically you're just rubbish. But the thing is to perform with that level of pressure before you actually go out on stage, you need to know how to control your nerves and just control your system and control your blood flow, etc. So you kind of come up with various ways of doing it through watching your professional athletes growing up, but you are always experimenting, and no one is really a mentor in the sense that no one can take you aside and say, hey, do this, this works for you. Everyone will give you what works for them. So I would say it's quite iterative in the sense that over the years, I've just learned so many different ways of controlling my nerves and pressure and performing with the best version of me that eventually I came across a sports psychologist when I was in Egypt, actually. And he introduced me to meditation before performing, and basically how meditation gets you into the right state of mind to get the most out of your body, just as you might, fine tune your body for work or for an exam. It's the same concept with fights and the same concept with exercise. That's how I came across meditation. So many of you know, many of you perhaps you do know, I'm not sure, but Wim Hof is like a Dutch explorer, basically. He's known for climbing Mount Everest in just his shorts. Now, I'm not saying anyone should do that, but the point is that he basically he pioneered a method of meditation, which is all about blood flow and emotional regulation, which I started following from that point, which was the primary, I guess, source of help for me moving forward to control my nerves and perform in the best way possible.
So in your opinion, what are some of the ways that you would recommend, suggest, or you have experienced to improve the quality of life?
Okay, so I think for me, dominantly outside of working out, it's maintaining a state of mind in which you're content with what you have, but you're still growing as a person. In the sense that when you talk about a growth-oriented mindset isn't necessarily I want to achieve, let's just say, Z by the end of 2021. It's just that every day I want to be a little bit better than I was yesterday. I think that's, for me, is the core of maintaining the best quality of life outside of exercising. And that's not necessarily specific just to exercising. It could be in anything. As long as you're maybe 1%, everyone's heard about the 1% rule, right? Even when it comes to things like atomic habits, that they always preach getting 1% better. I think for people to be content and happy, they have to be growing in some capacity. So to improve the quality of your life is to always improve in something, wherever it might be, but just by a small amount every day, so you can confidently say that you've improved for the better.
But that actually brings me to my next question, which would be that how, Hasnan, would you describe, like a balanced approach toward life? How would you describe that? Somebody coming from this kind of a background.
So my angle is quite mixed because obviously growing up, obviously I'm Muslim, so growing up we had the Islamic aspect of what's a balanced approach to life, and then you have the Western aspect when it seems to be a bit of an imbalanced approach to life, and then how they try and regulate it with similar aspects of spirituality. From both of those aspects, what I derived is that a balanced approach to life is to give everything its full right. And what I mean about that is you have different spheres, right? So you have your family, you have relationships, you have exercise, your own individual health, is to give it its full right. And by full right, I mean that you respect it to a point where you invest fully into it and you try to improve each aspect. That's a balanced approach to life. And then if you want to refine that even further, you have to identify which parts of those essential needs and wants are most important to you. And then you can refine further by giving your full right in accordance to the priorities that you set. That's a bit of more of an advanced stratification, but that's how I would generally describe. For instance, Mustafa's work is obviously in the fitness industry, right? Now, somebody else, and he loves fitness industry, actually that's what makes him happy. Cool. Now, everyone will have exercise and they will give their full right to exercise in order to have a balanced approach to life, but it's not going to be the same weighting as Mustafa. And I think that weighting of priorities is something that you have to figure out yourself. I don't think necessarily it's something that anybody can teach you. And the way you figure it out is you try different things and you realize where you're most content. And by most content, I mean that you're able also to give your best version of yourself to other people. So an example of this is when I kickbox a lot of people, even different aspects of my life, have always said, oh, you spend too much time doing this, you don't give enough time to me, or how are you going to do this, for instance, right? But I know that by prioritizing my kickboxing, I'm giving them the best version of me. So if I don't prioritize kickboxing, actually, I'm probably going to give them a lesser version of me, but they don't understand that. But I understand that. That's the important thing, to understand what drives you and then prioritize accordingly.
How did you come across what drives you? How did you decide? How did you know this is something,
Okay.
from Kung Fu Panda to our general life? That is the question I think everyone is asking.
Yeah, I would like to say I had a dream and somebody told me in my dream, Hasnan, you're going to be doing this. But
That's the easier answer. Someone told me
didn't quite
that.
work like that. I can give you one is very personal, but I'll share it because I think it's relevant. So I'm quite lucky in the sense that my father put me into kickboxing when I was 6 years old. Now, he put me into kickboxing, and I'm sure, like many Pakistanis, I grew up in a very hectic household. There's always drama and things happening and crazy things that you're trying to always regulate yourself and do, the best you can do amongst loads of different types of drama. Now, I obviously gravitated towards kickboxing, one, because I was always trying to impress my brother because he was like my role model and I needed his affirmation for everything. And the second, because that's what I knew, because it's what I was exposed to initially. Now, given that I was exposed to these two things, I understood that kickboxing makes me feel good. Like, I didn't know what it was, but I knew it made me feel good. It made me feel powerful and control, confident. When I was stressed, I would always refer back to kickboxing. And so it was like an emotional regulation tool that I was using for such a long time, but I didn't know it. And then I got to 21, 22, and I think everyone goes through a period of their life when they go through, I'm not going to class somebody as depressed, but a phase of depression. Yeah. Everyone experiences this to different degrees. And I was like very down. I couldn't really see, let's just say, light at the end of the tunnel. Everything was quite bleak for a long, long period of time. And I remember I reconnected with my kickboxing coach, and nothing. I tried everything. I tried, going out with friends and every possible thing you read on the internet, I was trying to do. And it just wouldn't bring me out of, it wouldn't remotivate me. As someone who's very ambitious and always motivated, and that when that's taken away from you, it's very hard to get it back again. And it's very fortunate if you're exposed to that stimulus once again, right? So I reconnected with my coach, and I remember dragging myself to that session. I didn't want to go because when you're in that state of mind, you don't want to do anything, right? I didn't want to go. So I went to that session. And when I left that session, that same Hasnan was there. That Hasnan that's confident, full of life, who wants to engage with people. He's just like full of like zeal, effectively. He was back just from that one session. And then I understood very clearly. I spoke to my mom about this, and she said, you've always done it. So maybe taking yourself away from it, because a linking factor in this was that I didn't kickbox for about 8 months during this whole period. So she said, you've always done it. Maybe you've subconsciously been using that to regulate yourself. And then I said, okay, this is what gives me life. And it's quite deep, and apologies for making it more deep than perhaps it should be. But that's how I understood effectively what drives me. And for people, like, I guess it's just knowing what you're happy doing without anybody watching you. I think that's a good way to describe it. As in, I could sit in a kickboxing gym with just music playing, and I don't care who's behind me, who's in front of me. I have no idea, and I don't give a damn, to be honest. Like, I'm just happy. And I think everyone has that, and they just have to basically tune into yourself a bit more. When you're doing activities, think about how you're feeling, how it's making you feel. Just really engage and tune into yourself. And I think that's why meditation is important, because meditation teaches you to basically be more in touch with your emotions and feelings rather than just being in like a routine cycle of things, right?
Yes, that's true. That's true. And also because I totally agree with the fact that you mentioned that it has to do a lot with going in deep to yourself and discovering, all these things about yourself and how that can help you meditate and find peace and relaxation. But so that covers up what meditation is. But now I'd like to know specifically more importantly and deeply about meditation itself. Where does meditation come from? Like, where does it stem from? How did we come across this very useful tool, and like, how else can we use it?
Yeah, so there's lots of debate around this, but the general consensus is it comes from ancient India, Hindustan type of region, thousands of years ago. Effectively, it stems from there, and the practice has been continued, obviously, in Buddhism and obviously in China as always, Confucius, etc. But generally, it's agreed that it's from thousands of years ago in the Indian region. It comes from that part of the world, rather. In terms of what it does for people, I think that people are generally, it's more spiritual at its core because people are always looking for a higher purpose to deal with the stresses of life. So I think that's the core of it, in the sense that life becomes very stressful and you start to wonder why, because people can't do things without a why. Like, in the sense that if you don't have a why with anything in life, when something hits you,
Curiosity is a very natural human emotion. Yeah, man, definitely curiosity.
so it's a way of justification as well, rationalizing, tapping into a higher energy to justify basically what life is. And by tapping into that, it calms you down and gives you perspective. In terms of how you can use it outside of sports, I think the biggest thing for me is perspective. So the human body, generally, just humans generally speaking, when they get flustered, or when they experience emotions, depending on each person's personality, they can't think straight, or they don't necessarily make the best decisions. Or even when they're about to engage in any activity, if they're not in the right state of mind, they're not going to get the best out of their performance. I feel like everyone has to be at a neutral kind of, say, equilibrium in order to tune themselves correctly to do something. You can't necessarily go from here to here as effectively. It just won't happen. So an example for me, this is quite a funny example, to be honest, but I worked in security a lot during my master's. Security means like sometimes you're on doors, sometimes you're doing events, etc. And many things used to get me really angry, to a point I wanted to just punch somebody. Like, I just used to get super angry. And I knew that, okay, it's not the best way to deal with things, but I knew, one, I was good at managing my emotions, but two, I needed a tool, because throughout this time, me managing my emotions meant leave me the hell alone. It'll take maybe an hour or two and I'll come back to you. That's what managing my emotions meant. But then when I realized now I'm in a job whereby I have to learn how to be calm like this, not in an hour or two, I figured, okay, I now need a tool to get back to my emotional center faster. And the only way, I looked into many different ways of doing this. It could be going off in a storm. It could be just walking for ages, but there weren't quick methods. I started reading into meditation and reading into basically controlling your breathing. And what it does is it gets your blood circulating around your body a hell of a lot faster than it usually is. And I'm not sure about the exact science behind it. I'm not going to venture into it too deeply because I don't want to say anything incorrectly. But the idea is that it calms you down through increasing your blood flow and stimulating your vagus nerve. Your vagus nerve is responsible for effectively helping people relax and deal with stresses in life, right? So when you control your breathing and you control your thoughts and you effectively focus on the present, you're helping your body, one, calm down, two, you're increasing your blood flow, and then three, the response to that is your body's stress level decreases. Because when you're stressed, you have a fight or flight mechanism, right? So it's about getting out of that stress response rate back to an equilibrium, to a point now where you're thinking level-headed, basically to help you make the best decisions. And I think that can be applied to everything, whether it's, okay, I'm irritated, let me become calm, let me deal with this regularly. It could be, okay, my wife is driving me crazy. Before I say something that might damage our relationship, let me step out, come back to equilibrium, deal with it normally. It could be, I've got a big decision to make and a big business decision to make. I'm really stressed, or I've got lots of work and I've got a crazy deadline. That's another one. So when I have deadlines, my brain tells me, just work. Like, don't take any breaks, don't eat, don't do anything, just finish it, right? But I know if I step back and reach emotional equilibrium, I'm going to come up with a plan to do it better. So those are some of the examples where you can use the benefits of meditation to improve the quality of your life.
अच्छा example आया कि meditation is it's traveled throughout our lives in a way, जिस तरह आपको भी कह रहा हूँ कि जिस तरह रोड पे आप जा रहे हैं, आपकी गाड़ी लग गई, तो पास से कोई आपके दो तीन बुजुर्ग गुजरेंगे तो अक्सर आपको बोलेंगे कि बच्चे जरा सांस सूस लें, जरा इजी हो जाएं, ठंडे हो जाएं. That's also basically in a way that tells you to have just breathe and control your breathing and calm yourself down. तो वो भी देखना एक तरह की past throughout, मतलब आप कह लें जिस तरह बड़ों के वो होते हैं नहीं wise words होते हैं, वो आपको इस तरह की feeling आती है from life in general.
You know, obviously, as Mustafa mentioned, that it is already part of our lives, and even if we don't really recognize it in that particular way. So what would the starting point for anyone who wants to, you know, take this path and, you know, practice this, adopt this in his or her daily life? But what we suggest would be the starting point?
Starting point, I would firstly tell everyone to read a book that I read. It's you can Google it. It's Wim Hof's meditation method. That's a very good starting point. It's a method that I use. There are plenty of methods out there, spiritual, more so mindfulness. Mindfulness is more of a psychology aspect, as in it's used in psychological intervention. But the one that I would recommend more so is Wim Hof, because it's centered around breathing and to effectively bring about emotional regulation, breathing, increasing blood flow, and delaying the onset of stress. These three things, breathing, blood flow, delaying the onset of stress, is centered around all this. And I find that it's helped me massively. That's the first thing. So you can read his book if you want more of an insight, and he goes through it exactly. Like, he basically takes you through different stages. I believe he has 3 or 4 stages: first stage, second stage, third stage, fourth stage, and how you progress gradually through his program, if you like. So that's the first thing. So just to reiterate, Wim Hof's method, WIMHOF''S method. Yeah, please Google him. In terms of starting, so when I started his method, he has a method which is basically exposure to freezing temperatures and controlled breathing. That's the kind of 2 tools he uses. How he uses them, you can read more in the book and explain it in more depth, but those are the 2 tools he uses. So how I started basically was I used to have a shower every morning, a freezing shower, like a really, really cold shower. So I'd start off with a warm shower, okay? And then the last, I'll say, minute, coldest setting possible. And I would go there. And your impulse control is to do what when you have freezing water? You want to go from there, right?
Jump out.
Exactly. I would control my breath. And the thing you do is you focus on your breath whilst you're obviously experiencing these freezing temperatures, because it's teaching you to resist that temperature through focusing on your breath. It's that kind of redirecting your focus, basically. That's the first thing I did. So every morning I started off on 20 seconds, just manage 20 seconds of snap, just manage. Then it was 30 seconds, then 40 seconds. And now it doesn't really faze me to a point. I can stay there for 2 minutes, to be honest. It's not a problem. But that's how I started, basically, 20 seconds. Now, if you want to talk about more so mindfulness methods of meditation, which is when you just sit down and you empty your mind, you don't think about anything, you just literally close your eyes and you focus on everything that you can feel at that moment. So whether it's the way your hand is touching the carpet, or what you can smell, or whether it's the sound of the water hitting the sink, you just focus on what is present at that moment. If you want to start with that method, just allocate 2 minutes every morning. Genuinely, wake up every morning, make sure you're in a calm state of mind, just close your eyes and just listen and really zone into what is happening right now, not yesterday, not tomorrow, exactly right now, what is happening. And so what you do is you basically emptying your thoughts, but you're just focusing on what is happening exactly right now. Do it for 2 minutes every day. And then as you obviously do it more regularly, you can increase the time. But the time is not the problem. The biggest issue with this is consistency, which is why I say do it for 2 minutes or 20 seconds in the shower, because the shower is very convenient, right? You're going to have a shower in the morning most likely anyway, so you can just incorporate that into it. And the 2 minutes is 2 minutes. It's not that much of a big deal. So if you kind of integrate it in your life in a way which is convenient, you're more likely to be consistent with it. And you'll see the benefits straight away. And people, they'll start increasing time when they see the benefits. They're not going to increase time without seeing the benefits. So it allows both of those needs to be met. I hope that's a practical way to incorporate it and a realistic guidelines to what to expect.
I was just adding to the fact that I totally agree कि अगर आप थोड़ा सा भी time निकाल के, चाहे fitness, चाहे mindfulness, चाहे meditation, it just requires you to just get your foot through the door just to start. And I think that's the most important, crucial step in anybody's journey towards anything, not just meditation, but life goals in general.
The kind of summarizing point is that I watched a video the other day. It was kind of like the science behind motivation. And people say different things. People say, okay, discipline is more important than motivation. You're not always going to have motivation, which is all true. But what they don't understand is that motivation, most of the time, doesn't actually come before the activity. It comes after you start. So basically, when you start the activity, and even if it's 2 minutes, right? So it could be someone putting their shoes on and taking that first minute when you're running, for example. That's when that motivation starts. So if you want to be consistent, what I would say to you is, if it's skipping, take it kickboxing, whatever, I'll apply my example because it's more relevant. What I tell myself sometimes when I'm really not in a good frame of mind, I'll just go and do 5 minutes, literally. That's it. I tell myself, if I do 5 minutes, I'm going to come out and I'm happy. I don't care. I've gone and I've done it. Usually 5 minutes ends up being a lot longer than 5 minutes. But the point is that once you've taken that step and you've kind of tricked your brain into thinking that it's not going to be that much of a task for you, come on, it's not a big deal, that the motivation will then come. Why? Because now you're seeing the results and that blood is flowing. But it's taking that step. Just minimize it for yourself. Do everything in small steps. 5 minutes. What is 5 minutes? Once that 5 minutes happens, things will just become more natural. Because everything I found with relation to fitness and meditation in life generally, it's all momentum. So when you're in a rut, if you start off with the 5 minutes, then after about a month, you're going to want to spend all your time in the gym because it's momentum. And once you break that momentum, it's very hard again. So when you haven't got momentum, minimize the task, understand the motivation will come after. Once you've got the momentum, leverage the hell out of it. But that's all I can say.
Rhythm and pace, focus bana ke, sath momentum bana ke, you have to carry your way. through any kind of obstacle, basically.
If we summarize the whole thing, start small, read Wim Hof, take the time to train your brain because your brain will facilitate everything else. That's all I'll say.
Perfect. He just summarized our episode. So thank you for watching, and until next time, Khuda Hafiz. And once again, thanks to our panelists.